What's going on, Raider Nation? Welcome to the Raider Nation pod. We got a great show for you today, including a new segment that I am trying out. Let me know what you think. We're going to talk about Fernando Mendoza, Dante Moore, and who may be the next Raiders head coach. What is going on, Raider Nation? Welcome to the Raider Nation pod. I'm excited. There's a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Raiders head coaching search. We're going to talk about Mike Tomlin and the Steelers a little bit. And we're going to visit the Fernando Mendoza versus Dante Moore debate, which already has an answer to, but I'm excited to talk about that. I'm also going to try a new segment. Going to mess around and see if you guys like it. I hope you enjoy it. But let's just dive right in here. This is Elias Trejo again with the Raider Nation pod. And let's talk about the coach here for a second. Again, we fired Coach Pete Carroll, and now we're searching for a head coach. Spytek and Brady are doing their thing, and I'm excited to kind of see what things look like. So far, the confirmed interviews, those that we have completed. I believe there's 5 completed ones. That's Kevin Stefanski, the former Browns head coach, 2-time coach of the year. Matt Nagy, the Chiefs OC, Mahomes developer, potentially there. You got Davis Webb, Broncos QB coach. He's a young rising star. If he doesn't get a job this cycle, he's going to get one eventually. Vance Joseph as well, which is interesting. Broncos DC. He's just an experienced former head coach. And Clint Kubiak, which I believe is one of the favorites for the Raider Nation, the Seahawks OC, as far as offense goes. Requested interviews, and this is what I like. It feels like we're just talking to a lot of people. Ejiro Evero, the Panthers DC. He's a strong defensive builder. He's doing great things over there. I miss our safety, by the way. Trevor Morrig, I miss him. Mike LaFleur, the Rams OC, with he's from the McVay tree, which is definitely an interesting one. You got Chris Shula, the Rams DC, who I believe is currently the favorite in betting odds to be the Steelers' next head coach. Nathan Steelchase from the Rams, he's a Rams passing game coordinator, so we're definitely digging into that McVay tree over there. Robert Saleh is another one that's been requested or talked about. Brian Flores, John Harbaugh. There's been some conversation there, but it doesn't look like he's going to be interviewing with the Raiders, or it hasn't been set yet. So super interesting. There's a big mix of candidates here. Some defensive, some offensive minded. And it's going to be interesting to see who they hire. Now, I do believe that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the first overall pick. The more I watch him play, the more I hear him talk, the more I want him in that silver and black. And honestly, unless we get a king's ransom through those trades, which, by the way, the Jets have a ton of picks. So this is going to be interesting. And I don't think getting out of the first round, out of the number 1 overall pick, is going to take 2 first rounders. I'm talking 3, 4, you know what I mean? Like, we're talking a king's ransom if you want to move, because I do believe that Mendoza is by far the best quarterback in this draft. Now, here's the reality. He may not be the best quarterback in next year's draft. So if the Raiders do pass on the number 1 overall pick and go number 2 and look at a offensive tackle or potentially a wide receiver, that would really load up their offense with weapons, and maybe set them up to make a move next year for the first overall pick. I tend to be a guy that lives in the moment. I love everything that I'm seeing from Fernando Mendoza, and I hope that's who we go for. Who we hire as the head coach is going to dictate likely the direction that we go in the draft. And a lot of people are talking. They want an offensive-minded head coach. They want a young offensive-minded head coach. And I can definitely see why, because it makes sense when you're drafting a quarterback number 1 overall. And again, this is obviously up for debate. But I think the biggest issue for the Raiders over the last decade has been the inconsistency from the quarterback position, the inconsistent production from the offensive line, especially this year, and just overall inconsistencies. And I know I talked about this in a previous podcast, but if we're not scoring points, if we're not keeping the ball and we're turning it over at a high level, that is a recipe for success, and that will always make the defense look worse than it actually is. I actually think our defense has the opportunity, as it is now, to be a formidable defense, especially with another year of development. But they need help from the offense. I believe it was Ken Norton Jr., which I think it was a cry for help when he said it. But he said sometimes the defense's best friend is the offense, and vice versa. It could also be the enemy if you have an offense that is consistently turning the ball over. And we saw that this year with Geno Smith. I mean, I don't think anybody expected the Raiders to secure the number one overall pick. I think a lot of us felt like, hey, we might be in that 7 to 10, I guessed 11 wins. I was wrong. But we thought we'd do better than we did. And when we didn't, and when we saw how bad it was like, oh shit, we might draft number one. We finally secured it in the Tank Bowl when the Giants just whooped our asses. That was an ass whooping that I was okay with. It hurts the pride. I hate seeing the Raiders lose, but it's not the first time I've seen them lose. In fact, I've been more frustrated by their late season wins that take them out of the opportunity to draft a quarterback early. And this year we did it. We secured it, and I think it's going to be the last time in a long time that the Raiders draft in the top 10. And it's because I think they're going to do it right, and I think they're actually going to get Mendoza. Now, I will say again, and I talked about it, and I actually heard JT the Brick talk about this on his podcast. It's the right move to trade the number one overall pick if we just get a ridiculous offer from the Jets that we can't say no to. And if we end up with multiple first round picks, why don't we reach out to, the Ravens? Why don't we reach out to the Bengals? Why don't we reach out to one of these teams that have a semi-young, experienced veteran quarterback and see if we might be able to flip a pick or two for a Joe Burrow or a Lamar Jackson, an already established quarterback. So that is one of my biggest things that I'm looking for this year is I really want to see what direction they go as far as the head coaches go. And I want to see what that staff looks like because I think there's a big opportunity here to go in one of different ways. You hire an experienced coach. And let me make this clear. When I say experienced, bro, we don't need 70-year-old Pete Carroll in the locker room. I'm talking, give me someone in their 50s, right? That's Mike Tomlin, But obviously, he sounds like, according to reports, he won't be coaching this year. But it would be awesome to see us maybe, get an experienced coach that can bring an experienced staff in here and really start leading this team to compete. We saw that with the Chargers. We saw that with the Broncos. And obviously the Chiefs. Also, they have experienced head coaches that have proven track records. Now, again, they're not in their 70s, and they're not hiring their own kids that I know of. Maybe they are. But, obviously that's kind of my preference, but I understand wanting to go with a younger coach, just a younger overall vibe. We see success there with the Rams, with the Bears. So, for me, I don't know if there's one that's better than the other. I'm just excited that we can try to do this again, that SpyTech is involved in this, from the get-go on the first interviews, because, according to reports, he wasn't involved. There weren't any new interviews after SpyTech was announced as a GM, and a few days later, Pete Carroll was announced as the head coach. And I think it's important to align the age of your GM with the age of your coach, at least in a way where hey, we want this GM to be here for 10 years. Let's have a coach who can do this for 10 years as well. Because to be honest, man, that's the plan. It's disheartening that we're here again on one sense. It's exciting because, okay, we already fired Pete Carroll. Let's have a fresh start. But it's disheartening because, man, the turnover in coaches that we've had, and that leads to turnover in players and, letting players go that if they stay another year or two with us, they develop into solid contributors. But, a coach that's coming in now doesn't see the players in the same way that he would see that the previous coach did. He might like the elite players, but it's not just the elite players that make a roster great or that make a roster be able to compete every Sunday and go to the playoffs. It's the middle of the roster, the bottom of the roster, and a lot of coaches want to bring in their own guys that they're familiar with versus using, the players that failed with the previous regime. So it's interesting. Mike Tomlin just recently stepped down from the Steelers. I wish he was available. I know a lot of you guys aren't a fan of Mike Tomlin. He's in his 50s. I think he's like 53 or 56. He's still semi-young compared to what the coach we had before. We're talking 2 decades in age difference, a lot of people don't want him. And for me, when I look at a guy like Mike Tomlin, he coached 19 seasons and didn't have a losing record once. Like, I think we had, what, 2 winning records in the last 19 years? So why somebody wouldn't want a coach like that to coach the Raiders franchise, I'm still trying to understand it. Mainly because when I look at the quarterbacks he's had over the last, several years, he's doing it with Mason Rudolph. He's doing it with, he had a 78-year-old Aaron Rodgers this year and still had a winning record, won 10 games. I think Russell Wilson was a quarterback for a little bit. Our backup quarterback, was a quarterback for him. It's been a while since he's had elite quarterback play, but he still has motivated this locker room and has done a phenomenal job, with the Steelers. And when I look at the Steelers as a franchise, like, I mean, they've had 3 head coaches in the last 50 plus years. Since 1969, they've had Chuck Noll from 69 to 91, Bill Cowher from 92 to 2006, and Mike Tomlin from 2007 to 2025. That is a model of patience, model of support, and it's what I would love to see the Raiders be one day. Because damn, we've had more coaches in the last 2 to 3 years than the Steelers have had in over 5 decades. That's absolutely crazy. And there's no coincidence that, the Steelers have, been competitive, have made the Super Bowl, have made the playoffs in various decades. They've won, obviously some Super Bowls as well. So to me, that's the dream, and I know Steelers fans are annoyed that they don't have a playoff win. And there's Raiders fans saying, well, he hasn't won a playoff game. Shut the fuck up. And I mean that respectfully, by the way. We haven't been to the playoffs consistently 3, 4 years in a row in a long time. We're not a perennial playoff team. So, like, why wouldn't we want a coach that has shown he can keep winning regardless of who his QB is, regardless of the players coming in and out, like he's a good coach. And to me, the Steelers are, I think, the model as far as what we should want and we should love, as a franchise, is to be able to have one guy for almost 2 decades, almost 20 years. Can you guys imagine that? Like, I would love nothing more than to have the coach we have here that we're going to hire be the head coach for us all the way through Fernando Mendoza's career, which I hope is, Mendoza's 21, 22. I hope it goes until he's 38, 40 years old. That's almost 20 years. I want a head coach that we can keep like that is able to create the system, and knowing that we're going to lose coordinators because we're going to be successful, but someone that can just continue to, build this program, stay with the team, grow with the players, and really just see generations of Raiders fans, through and deliver it, with wins. And that's really what we need. Before we win the Super Bowl, we got to be a perennial playoff contender. We got to get to the postseason. You got to win your division. We have a tough division, and we need a coach that can do it. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes in transition even over the next 5 years in the AFC West. I don't necessarily see the same coaches for the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Chiefs being the same head coaches 5 years from now. So huge opportunity, huge transition, a little bit of an uphill climb, but you expect that. And honestly, I want that. I want my division to be the best division in the NFL. I want us to test each other so when we get into the playoffs, we've already played some top quality teams. And while some people may disagree, I don't think we're that far away from getting to the point where we can compete. I expect a lot of development from the two draft classes that we've had. And hey, let's hope Tyree Wilson's last game against the Chiefs is a sign of things to come, because there would be nothing better than having Tyree Wilson, finally step up and play as, play to the level where he was drafted to play at. And some players, it takes them a few seasons to develop and get there. And hopefully that's what we see, from the Raiders. But if I'm looking at the type of franchise I want to be, and who we are today, and I know it's the complete opposite, right? We've had, Pete Carroll, Josh McDaniels, and Antonio Pierce as our head coaches since in the last 4 years. You know what I mean? The Steelers, it's been, since 1969, and they've had the same number of coaches that we've had in the last 4 years. So that's absolutely mind blowing. Kudos to the Steelers for being there. And the cool thing I think about Tomlin is he didn't have to. I think he had a couple years in his contract left, possibly. He just stepped down. I think he said you either talk about it or you do it, and he's not going to talk about it. And for that man to just say, hey, I'm going to step down because I'm not doing my job. Haven't had a losing record in 19 seasons, but we're not winning playoff games. We're getting killed in the playoffs. That's going to happen when you don't have a quarterback, by the way. That's huge. So, shout out to Mike Tomlin there. I think he's going to have a great TV career if that's what he chooses to do, but he's still young enough where he can come in and be a head coach. I just wish he was available right now because, man, Tomlin in silver and black, what's better than that? You know what I mean? That would be awesome. He went black and gold. Going to silver and black would be awesome. But let's talk about who the new head coach may be looking at drafting, and it's one of my favorite topics to talk about. I can't stop gushing over him. I've been watching his highlights, his games like crazy. I will say that something about the playoffs right now with Fernando Mendoza has awoken something in him that we have seen glimpses of it during the season, but to me, and this is why, with some of the haters, I saw a video talking about, how most of his touchdown passes haven't been against elite teams. Well, watching him right now in the playoffs is absolutely incredible. I mean, so far, 42 total touchdown passes for the year, 6 interceptions. He's completing 72% of his passes. That is elite efficiency right there. As a head coach, he could lead Indiana to their first national title for sure, their first college football playoff championship, and it's incredible. And this is happening against teams that are in the top 10 defensively in the nation. So this is being done in that sense. I don't think he has a receiver that's going to be a first round pick. You look at Ohio State where they have first round receivers almost every year. This is a quarterback that, and I love his receivers, by the way. I think they're amazing. I would love to draft one of them, but he doesn't have all pro, type wide receivers that have a lot of draft buzz heading into the draft. When I look at what he did in the Rose Bowl, phenomenal against Alabama. And again, Indiana is blowing these teams out, right? And people are saying, well, he's not carrying the team. It's just like, against Alabama, he threw 16 total passes, completed 14 of them, only had 2 incompletions. He only threw for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns. People say, well, that's not impressive. Well, the problem is they blew Alabama out 38-3. He didn't need to throw a lot. And he completely diced up that tough SEC defense. And he added some rushing as well. But after that long of a break, and keep in mind that Indiana was the first team to win in the college playoffs that had a first round bye. So, that's a big thing in itself. But for him to be that efficient, he completed 87% of his passes, still had 3 touchdown passes, and some of the throws he was making, and I'm falling in love with these back shoulder throws. He is accurate. The more I hear him talk, the more I hear people talk about him. He is a very cerebral quarterback. You want someone that's got that Peyton Manning type, mindset, that brain, and he knows where he wants to go with the ball, and he delivers it, which is really cool. And again, his ability to scramble and run and avoid negative plays is big. He gets the ball out of his hands quick, and he's also big enough to, to avoid a rush, to move in the pocket. He's not necessarily always looking to rush, but when he does, escape the pocket, he's still got his, eyes up, and he's still delivering some accurate throws, which even some of the pros struggle to pass as they're, running. And just to kind of see, Fernando Mendoza do what he's doing. Again, 6'5", 225 pounds. You know, I'm getting the types of vibes, and I'm not saying this is the exact same comp, but I mean Drake May, Trevor Lawrence, quarterbacks like that have just come out and playing. I've heard different things where his ceiling could be Joe Burrow, his middle ground is going to be Jared Goff, and his floor could be Sam Bradford, I think is the name that threw out. Which being 100% honest, I'll take anything in between Jared Goff and Joe Burrow, and I think he could be better, especially if he stays healthy. You know what I mean? And this is what's exciting. The thought of him and Tom Brady, having a meeting of the minds, which he did say that Tom Brady is like his dream dinner, and that's going to happen. So I'm excited for that opportunity. It was the Peach Bowl that absolutely just like again blew my mind. He was even better at that point. He went 17 of 20. Again, only threw for 177 yards. That is something that people are like, well, he's not throwing for a lot of yards. But again, like you're completing 85% of your passes. He threw 5 touchdown passes. Like almost 1 out of every 3 passes from Mendoza was a touchdown, which is crazy when you consider, how Oregon shut out Texas Tech. Let's not forget that Texas Tech, I think it's the Raiders, completely dominated BYU, defensively and offensively. And then Oregon came out and scored, 50-something points against, in the first round. And then in the second round, they did their thing, and they did a great job defensively shutting out the Big 12 champion. For this to be a rematch, and the rematch, it's supposed to be harder, right? Like at this point, they already know what to expect. They already know what to do. And man, which, before I start, shout out to Fernando Mendoza's aunt. You are beautiful. Anyways, focus. Yeah, 177 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had more touchdowns than incompletions. It was such a cool thing. He was poised. It's a big game, and you can just see that he's still throwing darts. And some of those passes that he threw, it's just like, damn. One of those back shoulder passes to his receiver on the sideline, the touchdown pass to the tight end, that was just like, it was just perfectly delivered, and you're seeing that zip on the ball, and I just love it. And keep in mind, with the Raiders, you're going to play indoors for a lot of your games, right? You have your 8 or 9 home games, because there's 17 games in Las Vegas. You have that extended home game, over in Los Angeles as well against the Chargers. Man, he's gonna be pretty set up with the Raiders coming up. It's exciting to see, but just to see how he's doing against Oregon and Alabama, 2 premier teams, premier defenses, and he's just absolutely lighting them up. I mean, and again, this goes back to everybody hating, like, oh, he's getting all of his numbers, doing all of his stuff against easy, teams. I mean, when you go 31 for 36, complete 86% of your passes for 369 yards, 8 touchdowns, and no interceptions against the Oregon Ducks, and the Alabama Crimson Tide, that's big. That's big time. He's a big time player, and I just think that's one of the coolest things, in the world, to see a quarterback like that and really coming alive, in the playoffs and the championship on Monday that's coming up. Miami is playing violent. They're playing physical, and I'm so excited to watch that game because I want to see an offensive shootout. I want to see Mendoza under stress. Not just after the ball snaps, but just the game itself. How is he going to play and perform when the game is tight? And if he does like he did against Ohio State, man, he is going to continue to solidify that number 1 spot. And again, at this point, I'm taking Mendoza, number 1. It's going to be so hard to trade out of it. And again, it's going to take a lot, to to move out of that spot. So and it was very interesting to see the difference between Dante Moore and Mendoza, because both of those quarterbacks were touted as the number one and number two. And there's a lot of people that talked about Dante Moore being better than Mendoza. And I've watched some of Dante Moore's games, and I don't see it. Does he have moments? Sure, but with only 20 starts in college, there's no way that you can look at both quarterbacks and say, yeah, Dante Moore. Maybe Dante Moore has a higher ceiling, but even then, it's just like I have a hard time seeing it and believing it. If you're gonna draft over ceilings, of higher ceilings or who has a high ceiling, you're gonna end up drafting guys like Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, right? Like I think Mendoza is different than any quarterback that we've seen come in. Maybe size, it's similar to other people. People are saying, hey, he's like this, he's like that, but just who he is, how he is, and how he plays, it's so unique, and I've just been loving watching him play. But I mean, you saw Moore turn the ball over like 3 or 4 times. The game just looked too big for him, and that was against Indiana. And Oregon has a phenomenal offense. They have they have some players on there. So just to see those two go head to head, and just kind of see how the game went, I think it solidified it, for me that Fernando Mendoza is the obvious choice. Now, again, and I've talked about this, when we're sitting there at number one and it's our turn to pick, I hope we just announce that we're taking Mendoza, so the number two pick is on the clock. But if we don't do that, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of trade packages come in, because with Dante Moore now staying in college, he announced today that he is going to go to college for one more year, which honestly for him, I think it's the greatest decision he's ever made. Yes, he gave up $50 million, but man, I don't know if I would take $50 million to play for the Jets. I'm lying. I'll take half of that, and I'll be your starting quarterback. Call me, Jets, if you need one. But yeah, it's just one of those things that's crazy. So now that Mendoza is the clear top number one pick, and there's nobody else that I think would even flirt with the top 15, the value of the number one pick this year has increased significantly. And that's going to leave the Raiders with a very, very interesting decision, if, you know, trade offers are being made. And I think it's the perfect storm, right? Like a weak free agent quarterback class. It's going to be a weak, NFL draft quarterback class. So you have a quarterback that is rising up the charts, for a lot of people, that he is performing, and it's impressing so many people. This could be one of the most epic trades for the first round, for the first overall pick ever, if the Raiders are willing to do it. And it's going to be interesting. Brady, obviously, he spent a lot of time playing against the Manning brothers. You have a Manning that is going to be available to draft next year. Is that the move? Are we looking for instant gratification, long-term planning? It's going to be interesting to see what we do, but I think this is going to be the most important number one overall pick for the Raiders that they've ever had, and what they do with it. Again, just take Mendoza. But man, it would be hard for me to turn down a big, massive haul, especially when you think about the Jets. Like, they have so many picks. They traded away, Sauce Gardner, Quinnen Williams. They're loaded with first round picks. So I think they have 2 this year, 2 next year. Do we do it for 4 first rounders? Like, do we take Carnell Tate, number 2? Do we draft an offensive tackle with their other pick, which I think is somewhere between 10 and 20? And then do we go into next year with 2 first round picks and enough ammunition to just say, hey, we're pulling the trigger on this rookie? I don't know. It's going to be tough. Again, I say just take Mendoza, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I feel like it's going to be a hard one to screw up this year. So we'll see how it goes. But Raider Nation, there's a lot going on right now. I'm excited. I want to kind of know your thoughts, what you would like to see us do on the coaching side, what you would like to see us do, on in the draft. Are you trading it? Are you not trading it? Um, it's going to be interesting for sure. Let me know your thoughts on all of that, and also stay tuned for this new segment as I give some breaking news updates. Take care. The Las Vegas Raiders fired Pete Carroll after a disaster of a season. Perhaps one of Carroll's biggest mistakes was hiring his own kids to be on the coaching staff. ESPN came out with a report that pointed out to some concerns of nepotism. You see, his sons, they were the assistant quarterback coach in charge of game management, the offensive line, and the run game coordinator. Ouch. We all know how that went. Man, I don't know why, but this story sounds familiar. Two brothers causing chaos, completely ruining things. Oh, wait. That's it. We tried bringing prestige worldwide to the Raiders offense, and it was a disaster. Despite plenty of room for activities in Las Vegas, after the 2025 season, the Carroll brothers did not become best friends with the Raider Nation. Brandon and Dale, Brandon and Nate, unfortunately will not be attending the Catalina wine mixer together with the Raider Nation in 2026. Next up for the Raiders, the 2026 draft buzz is heating up. And the Raiders snagged the number 1 pick after a 3-14 season. Everyone's talking about Fernando Mendoza as the Heisman hero, and he is for sure going to be the number 1 pick. But there is this former Jets scout. You heard that right. The Jets have scouts. Named Daniel Kelly on X. It's first round mock. He went on Jason Whitlock's show and he dropped this bomb. He thinks Mendoza is a 4th round quarterback. He says he's stiff, he's awkward, and he can't read defenses and might bust like Shedeur Sanders. At first, I thought it was a joke. I mean, seriously, the Jets having a scout. And when I watched the video, the dude had like a red lips tattooed on his neck. So many red flags with this guy. I mean, him rating Mendoza as a 4th round grade might actually be a good thing for the Raiders. I mean, if this guy has bad judgment to put a tattoo on his neck like that, I mean, he's probably got bad judgment as a scout, especially being a former Jets scout. I think that's important. But hey, let's be honest, Raider Nation. This would not be the first time the Raiders have drafted a 4th round graded prospect in the 1st round. That might actually be an improvement compared to what we're used to.